So this is Talkaoke pop-up talk about whatever you want to talk about. We've got a kind of loose theme that you could choose to go with or not, which is genomics ready for the masses? Da, 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 da. I don't know if that's something that you're interested in, but the whole point about Talkaoke is kind of up to you where you want to take this conversation. Any starters? Saul, Scott, Nathan? Anything?
It sounds like one of those big picture type questions, and I consider myself what you call a trench dweller. You know, I'm usually down in a very specific niche part of the field.
What is your trench?
My trench is probably signal processing, and most of my things are science, a little bit of molecular biology, a little bit of Python development.
Right.
Together, my title as a scientist probably masks like complexity of kind of what I do. So very transactional. Jack of all trades, master of none, that sort of thing. But very interested in assembly, algorithms, that sort of thing, of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this a thing, when you sort of at a party, is it hard to communicate what you do?
Yeah, it is. Like, they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, bioinformatics developer. And they're like, well, what is that? And I'm like, well, it's a combination of statistics and math and life science. And the eyes glaze over, and you can tell they're not interested. Like, how can you make a conversation like that riveting? You can't. Like, it's impossible. So,
okay. I mean, any tips about how to make it more riveting so that people don't glaze over when you tell them?
I'm still working on that. Like, no idea. Like, my friends are general contractors or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I understand that about as much as they understand what I do. But you keep on going on anyways. Typically, someone will ask a more pointed question. They'll be like, well, does that have anything to do with this company? I read the product about this. I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with that. So, conversation goes downhill from there. But then again, I don't really talk about words.
Come and have a seat.
Like last year.
We're back. So this is Talkaoke Pop Talk Show. We've got Nathan, it's Scott, isn't it? And we've got Saul and Mikey. What's her name again? David. So the moment we're talking, Nathan's got this issue. When he goes to a party, he's just chatting to they say, what do you do? And what do you say?
Oh, I say I'm a bioinformatics developer. They ask what that is, and I say, well, it's a combination of mathematics, computer science, molecular biology, statistics, and these are core topics that no one has any interest in talking about ever.
So I mean, literally, their eyes glaze over. Is there a better way to say it? Will people be more excited about this in the future when genomics hits the big time?
Well, I would say that you need to use your skills to improve your party banter. So
I have none.
Well, no, that's the thing, is that actually you do have those skills. You just need to be sort of. You basically need to have a coding scheme in the different ways that you have of introducing yourself to topics of interest. And then you need to monitor the responses and taking down some notes. And just to build a model of a successful conversation. And then once you've identified the key moments and the key points that you're making that are getting some good feedback, which you could monitor in various different ways. You need to code it, right?
Yeah.
Once you've coded it, you might have the skills to make some general breakthroughs in science communication in a party setting. Thinking paper titles.
Now that you mention it, I do have one thing I will say. The pharmaceutical industry, obviously, they know quite a bit about that. They know what pharmaceuticals does, and I will basically say, there's a ton of research data out there. There's a ton of genomic data out there, and there needs to be a way to analyze that as quickly as possible. And you can say bioinformatics fills that gap, but that's about, I think, as simple as I've been able to make it. The sociological aspects of applying bioinformatics to any sort of social situation. I don't know if there is a formula for that. It just sounds like something that's kind of beyond me. Usually alcohol gets flowing anyways, and versus what crazy thing Trump has tweeted, and then we go way outside that.
Okay. Well, I wonder what Trump thinks about genomics. Anyway, David.
I just had an additional suggestion for him. I think what he should do is find a bunch of bioinformaticians and then find successful outcome, and then try to merge what they're trying to do and try to find some correlation with how to present bioinformatics to people at parties.
Okay, so you think there could be a scientific approach to this? You kind of agree with Saul, there could actually, but we need a larger sample size. Maybe a bioinformatics party would actually do it so that you can start to test some of these ideas. What would that look like? Would it be a good idea even?
Actually, we might have one right here, right now. This seems to be going well.
Okay,
I like this. Like,
okay.
if I had a beer, I'd be all set.
Oh, me too. We should definitely get the beers in. Scott, what are you going to say?
Well, I think they have Mead Hall every month. They're
Yeah. What is this? Is there a kind of meetup or something like that?
Yeah. There's Boston computational biology.
Yeah.
meetup.
Okay.
That might be reinforcing the problem a bit, because if you're only talking to other bioinformaticians, then presumably they'll have a fairly high level of interest to begin with, and in a way the test is a much more interesting one to see can you get other people interested.
Yeah, actually that is...
Yeah, so you actually... oops, what's going on there? That's weird. Anyway, go.
No, yes, excellent point too. Bioinformaticians probably are. I mean, this guy and I talk quite a bit about these things whenever we're hanging out. But yeah, I suppose mixing up with bioinformaticians still wouldn't be a way to, sticking with the question there. Get it ready for the masses. It's a very bioinformatics centric thing, and even among scientists, I've worked at a bunch of different companies. Usually when you get to the nitty-gritty, the details of what you do, you tend to attract a lot of diverging opinions. Some people telling you're an idiot, some people telling you should try this approach. Science has a habit, I think, of attracting megalomaniacs too, which kind of like have their own very unique, rigid way of thinking. Well, not always, I shouldn't say that, but let's just say it might make for a more tense party than I thought.
I mean, in a way, it's about invading other parties. Maybe going to the humanities faculty in Cambridge and actually, or somewhere else, somewhere completely different, and try the bioinformatics shtick, see if it works. David, you were going to say something.
I don't think I was going to say anything.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You just saw that.
Just that face.
Yeah, that you had. I'm about to say something. Face.
I'm curious, why do you work there? You say CO King?
I'm part of the Wall Street sector of this industry.
Yeah. What does that mean? Tell us what that means. You're an investor. Have you got money?
No, I don't. I give other people advice who have money. So basically, I help bridge the investment community to help them understand what's going on in genomics.
Yeah.
I tell them what's going on and give them advice. And
do they have the same problem? Do they? No, I think it's some kind of radio interference. But anyway, we'll just kind of like, we'll work over that. But I mean, what happens when you're trying to advise people? I mean, money people. Are you advising the money people or the genomics people?
the money people.
I mean, do they do the same thing? Do they kind of like when you start talking about the things that he was talking about, PCR or about, data crunching? Do they glaze over, or do they get sharp about it?
Unfortunately, no, they have to listen to me, and I'm not a scientist, so I get it wrong. So it's basically me being told something from a scientist, me getting it wrong, and then explaining it to Wall Street in a wrong fashion.
Right. Okay. So in a way, there is a maybe.
I specialize in giving bad advice.
Okay. So, but at least you're communicating with not maybe the masses, but at least the non-expert, and you're getting them interested. Maybe it's the dollar signs. Maybe that could help for you if you talked about, potential. I mean, I know certainly for things like Bitcoin, when people started making money, people got very much more interested in cryptography. Is that a way ahead? I don't know.
I don't know. I think that's one small group of people with a very specific interest talking to another quite small group of people. And people with money is a small group of people to invest. And in a way, I think the interesting challenge is to make it exciting, give people the sense that they've got something to gain from it, because that's why Wall Street people are interested, right? It's because they've got something to gain from it. So they'll push through the technical detail in order to be able to understand it and to make good investment decisions.
They will understand. They will understand it. I mean, these are still smart, very smart people. They might not have a science background, but yes, if it means, this is the right decision, or this is the right decision, this is the right company, this is the wrong company, they're going to take that extra. And in fact, what becomes habit in Wall Street is a lot of us know how to discount free cash flows, and it's so intuitive we don't even have to think about it. So the most interesting aspect of our job is actually understanding the science of the companies, because The other stuff is really easy. And in fact, if you look at half of the people in life sciences in Wall Street, they actually have a life science background, not a finance background, because the reality is that it's easier to teach a scientist how to discount cash flows than it is trying to teach somebody with an accounting background science.
Come and have a seat on the table of the chat. At the moment, we're talking about Nathan's got an issue. Come and sit down. It just makes us look more busy. You don't have to say anything. Scott's not said that much, but he's been a magnet for everyone. You know, he's the first to come and sit down. He's been a magnet for everyone else. And maybe you could be the same thing. Let me just ask you your name. Eliana. So we've got Saul, we've got David, we've got Nathan and Scott. My name's Mikey. At the moment, we're kind of talking about, in a way, it started off with Nathan. Like he says, I'm a bioinformatics person at a party. People just kind of like, you know, start to do that a little bit. I hope I wasn't doing that when he said it. But anyway, the point is that it came to this thing that people that are not experts don't find it exciting or interesting. They don't have a hook to actually grab onto some of these ideas. But David's not a scientist, but he's a kind of advisor to investors. And it seems like, you know, I guess this question about, you know, having the inside track and being able to knowing where to invest suddenly makes people interested in the science. So that's one way. That's what we're talking about at the moment. Scott, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I think part of it also just goes back to the education system and fostering curiosity in science. It's generally presented as a topic that's difficult and complicated, and a lot of people lose interest, and so there's less just general scientific literacy amongst people that aren't specializing in science. But as kids, we're all really curious about how everything works, and we want to know why and all of that, so I think that's a bigger issue that needs to be addressed, and it kind of ties back to your original question, are the masses ready? No, it's probably the format in which it's taught, that people present it as hard or complicated. So it really isn't. You just have to...
I have to say I agree with that very much, and I noticed, because I moved to Boston in January, and I've been living, first 4 months I was living in Cambridge. So I finished my PhD in London, moved here for a postdoc, and in my first week in Boston, I was shoveling snow outside my apartment, and every single person who I stopped on the street just to have a chat with, we ended up talking about some really academic subject, and I felt like, wow, I've really arrived. You know, I've just been shoveling snow, now I'm talking about research methodologies with like 6 different neighbours. Obviously, Cambridge is a very unique place, but it is a nice place, and it's a nice place because everybody's interested in ideas, and if you have enough people who are educated enough, then I think actually the party gets more interesting as well. So the benefit of being able to explain the details of bioinformatics at a party by having more educated party guests actually might make for a much more interesting party.
I agree. Go to a different party.
Yeah. Are you going to the right parties? That's the question. I mean, could you Eliane? You go. What are you doing here? Are you a bioinformatics? What are you?
Clinical diagnostics.
Do you have the same problem that you can't explain what you do? Always, okay. Well, we might come up with a solution by the end here. Maybe we won't. One solution is to educate the... Hello, come to the seat. We have got... Come and have a seat. We've got David, we've got Nathan, we've got Scott, we've got Saul, I'm Mikey. What's
Go away.
In a way, you know, Oscar Wilde said the most impolite thing you can do is ask people what they're...
Are you by red too? Okay. I actually cover their stock.
Okay, so we maybe get some inside information.
Yeah, you're one of the more boring stories.
Well, we're actively trying to solve that problem right now.
It starts with Norm. He's pretty boring.
Okay, so we need
I
to.
will not tell them. I want to tell them.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna strike that from the record. Come and have a seat on the table of chat right
Actually,
now.
where is this being broadcasted? Is that
Let me give you a card. But this is going online. This is going online. There's a card.
I got to see if I can get a copy of this file. See if it's photogenic or not. I have no idea.
I mean, I would watch it to the end because we may, or you might be here to the end. We may well find a solution to how to make this a more compelling story, how to make this a more interesting story.
Actually, I do have a question about the financial part of what you guys are doing now. To walk around here, it looks like everybody's doing things that are instrument related. Everyone's building an instrument for or a pipeline for genome assembly. Once you have a pipeline like that, and these companies, they are profitable if they can make something better than someone else, but once you have all that information, do you see like the diagnostic step beyond that being something that's profitable? Is that something you work within?
The beauty of instruments is that the revenue is incredibly sticky. So, you are trying to. It means once you have that instrument into that laboratory, that instrument's going to be used, and it's going to have a revenue stream that's an annuity for a very, very, very long time. So it's a very, very safe. So, for example, once you have that the DD-seq or the digital droplet PCR instrument into that place, you're a little less worried about 10x Genomics, or you're a little less worried about the other one you just bought coming in and getting ripped out, or Fluidigm's instrument coming in there and ripping out your instrument. So basically, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at the demand for your instrument and seeing on a go-forward basis who wants to buy what. So if you guys could tell me who wants to buy what instruments, I'd love to hear it.
Actually, would it interest you to know that our site just got shut down 2 weeks ago, the one in Cambridge? Did you know that?
I did know that.
Okay.
You're part of New Bio then. Yeah, okay.
So you're already, you know everything. You're on the inside track. You know all that. I didn't know any of this. I don't really 100% know what that's about. But at the same time, maybe what about Nathan's question about? Is it the safe stuff in a way that gets developed, and what happens?
The stuff beyond the instrument, is that safe? Would you consider that safe? I don't know if I would. Like, I don't know this from a.
It's actually it's interesting. I like Bio-Rad's approach because they did something that's very much like what Roche did with Ingenia. Is that they looked at Illumina and they said this is a very, very dominant position in the market. We can't just be a me too, because if you look at me too products, they don't do very successful because, again, you can't rip out a box. Once it's in there, you have to have something that exceeds it. So, the intention with Roche and Ingenia was, let's leapfrog and see if we can rip out the old instrument. I think at least 2.5 years ago, Bio-Rad had that same sort of intention of, let's get something that's different. If it was already on the market, it would have been too expensive for Bio-Rad. And it would have been, maybe it doesn't work out. In this case, it doesn't work out for them, but it was an attempt, and I actually admire that.
Okay. Scott, have you got any views on this? Any views? Do you do much for Bio-Rad as well?
Yeah, we are in the same group.
What are you doing?
Pretty much the same thing. No, like we were doing data analysis for the genomic data sets. We also
we work hand in hand together.
we also like building a couple of internal websites for people to use, like they can analyze the data themselves.
Okay.
Are you going to have to move to Pleasanton, or?
Of course, open to the move to Pleasanton. There really hasn't been too much talk on that just yet, but right now we're in the middle of kind of transferring technology out there. But I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a public forum, but if we can get some good if we can make money out of this information, especially, that's good.
I am buy rated on Bio-Rad stock, by the way. So
I had a very great conversation with you all. It was nice to meet you all, but I probably should have wandered around.
Nathan, give us final thoughts on to throw into the mix. What I mean, maybe you could actually help us with this question. Are we ready for this?
I'll keep it simple. Yes.
Thanks for that. We could have done with a more complex answer, really.
I don't have one. Take care, guys.
I mean,
actually, let me give me my card.
come and have a seat on the table of the chat. Bring your laptop along. we've got David. We've got what's your name again?
粤文
And we've got Saul over here. My name's Mikey. What's your name?
I'm Eugene.
So, are you bioinformatics? Are you diagnostics? Are you something completely different?
I'm in recruitment.
Who are you looking for?
Well, I do recruitment for bioinformatics, genomics. Have done for about 15 years.
Yeah.
So I've seen the genomics and bioinformatics industry grow over that time.
Has that made it easier, or has it made it harder to do it?
It's been in peaks and troughs over those years.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's booming at the moment. There's high demand for that skill set, and unless we educate people and get them to take it as a subject, there will be a shortage of staff in this area in 5 years' time.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, a wider question that, I mean, Saul touched on it earlier on, just from a more kind of social perspective, like, you know, we're entering this world where not just genomics, but all kinds of sciences are kind of encompassing us, but the knowledge or the interest and curiosity doesn't necessarily seem to be there. Is that down to education? Is it down to just kind of reframing that, communicating in a different way? How do we get, or is it just not necessary because it can...
I think it's necessary. Genomics England have done a lot of work with public debates in the UK. They've toured the country. They've got the genomics education programme that's available for the public. Also trying to teach nurses and clinicians about the benefits of it. So I think they're doing that work in the UK. Whether you can get it on a global scale is a lot different.
Yeah. I mean, how does the UK compare to the US when it comes to how science goes down, how things are?
I think it's a lot faster paced in the US. There's a lot more investment, but I think there's some great talent in the UK and in Europe. So it's slightly different. They just don't have the flow of money coming in that they do in the States.
So there's maybe more investment coming in.
So I remember when, so I graduated from university close to 1999, 2000, so right into the middle of the communications tech boom. And it was amazing because suddenly everybody had a server in their bedroom and they were setting up all kinds of interesting web services and then getting loads of investment from nothing, and it was inspiring, and lots of young people gravitated towards that, and they're still doing it. But the same thing hasn't happened in bioinformatics really, and I think it's partly because the instrumentation is so expensive and the kinds of education that you need are just a lot more complicated. So I wonder if there is going to be that kind of bedroom biotech boom at some point, and is there a technology out there that's going to make that happen? It's going to make it possible for a young entrepreneur just working on the kinds of domestic or garage technologies that you saw happening in the 90s. Is that going to happen?
Is that the answer? Genomics in the garage?
I think it can happen, just down to the fact of the software, the data analysis. They're teaching kids today at school Python, and most of the tech boom back in 99, 2000 was people developing websites that didn't actually have any use, but they thought they'd make millions from advertising. But
so in a way it was a kind of speculative bubble.
Yeah, it was, but there were some great companies that came out of it, and you've got to have a lot of failure to get great companies. But you've got to encourage that in children and in students, to say that you can go out there and you can fail and you can come up with ideas and try them out. And that's going to be encouraged. I think there's a lot of that goes on, especially around Cambridge and Boston itself.
Okay, David, you got a view on this?
I mean, I think Oxford right now is trying to do just that with their little handheld sequencer. So if you have, I mean, obviously you need a more high-powered computer system, but I mean, you could do hopefully you could do little genomic studies in the palm of your hand. And imagine what that could open up in this industry. I mean, you're not going to have the statistical power, but maybe you'll have something else there.
Okay, so we're talking about genomics in the garage. Is it possible to do it? I mean, what kind of studies could happen? What kind of developments could happen? Is it going to be a little bit like that, the scene in Blade Runner where he gets is it Blade Runner or Minority Report, isn't it? Where there's or probably both, where they've got this kind of like backroom genetics labs.
Well, I think it's not just about the technology. It's also about the just how sexy is it to do this? How appealing is it for people? How imaginative can they be? And I think that's maybe a little bit of a problem because I don't think it's yet become a part of the public imagination or the kinds of things that people go to universities wanting to become. And that's a real challenge.
Right.
It's a challenge of PR. It's also like, who are the people who are the examples that are going to be held up for that reason? You know, that's not quite there, I think. In the same way, this heroic story of the sort of startup people became quite a thing in the 90s and 2000s.
So no, you're saying it's not sexy enough, basically. I'm just going to condense
Basically,
that.
I mean, you can see it. I mean, it probably would have to start with using like the taboo word around clinicians because they don't like the idea of consumers making irrational choices from genetic data. But I mean, it could have happened with consumer genomics and something like a Helix offering. Because I mean, you know, maybe you are looking at it on an apps development standpoint where you could do apps development in a garage. Then I mean that's a possibility. And maybe the consumer is what's necessary in order to drive that. Because right now, when you're talking about the interest in it in the community, there's not much. I mean, outside of scientists to be interested in. I mean, I think that there's certain things like you know, what kind of wine you drink. Can you make your kid a soccer star? You know, these are not founded in. I mean, I don't know the clinical utility of these kind of things, but you know, are you helping engage the consumer? Maybe you are. I don't know.
I mean, maybe. I mean, sometimes, you know, with Talkaoke, it's interesting to go off the subject, to come back to the subject, but maybe that's the case also with genomics, that people would be more interested in these kind of clinical applications if there were some more lateral applications of genomics that were a bit more consumer oriented.
Is it too regulated for that to happen? Because I know clinicians are very nervous about things, and things get shut down, right? You know, 23andMe was probably one of the most consumer successful startups in this area, and it had sanctions all over the place for giving people health advice, which wasn't borne out by the science. So I wonder if there should be some sort of threshold of impact that you can, you know, like a playground basically, where you can do things that are a bit outlandish without immediately getting sanctions from the medical community, just so that people can get excited about the ideas.
It's a great idea. I mean, and you could still have the treatment done through the physician. So I mean, you know, what's happening with BRCA right now? I mean, I think even earlier on is that people were terrified that. Well, I mean, that's a good one, because I mean that one really is very, very tied to a treatment, and very, very you know, BRCA mutations is a big deal, and it's one you want to take care of. But and maybe when you're talking about something like Alzheimer's, that's not something that's immediately treatable, and that does get physicians quite nervous that, you know, I have APO3 mutation there, you know, I'm going to have a horrible life, and you know, the physician has to say, I guess what I'm getting at is that maybe we need to be more open, exactly what you're saying, more open to allowing the consumer to have the genetic data, knowing that the physician on the other end can be the one who does the treatment.
I think you still need to do the counselling, the genetic counselling, you still need to do the education piece, because it's such a big impact on not just that person but their family as well, and who do you tell and who do you get involved. So there's not just the technology side and the software side, but there's also the counselling side and the repercussions on healthcare systems as a whole.
I mean, that's the thing with you know, we're dealing with people, so come and have a seat on the table of chat. You can bring your patisserie with you. At the moment, come and have a seat. At the moment, we got Saul, we got Eugene, and we got David. I'm Mikey. at the moment we're talking about how to sort of like get this kind of consumer interest, and there are issues about, you know, when we're dealing with big subjects, people's health, people's lives, come and have a seat, people's whole lives. This is Talkaoke, pop-up talk show. We've got Eugene, we've got David, we've got Saul, my name's Mikey. That's perfect, it's perfect, it's perfect. So, well, it's a pop-up talk show where we kind of go with the flow. At the moment we're talking about, you know, it started off with this question about, I guess it's about making genomics a bit more in the public eye. We had a guy called Nathan early on who kind of said, you know, when I tell people there's a bioinformatician, when I was actually glazing over myself, you know, when he told me, you know, but he's got a big problem because no one's that interested in it. So we sort of then started talking about how do we make, is it a lack of science education? Is it a lack of curiosity? Is it a lack of, sort of saying it's not sexy enough? And, you know, we need to do more kind of garage type, you know, small scale, almost I think a bit like a kind of microbrewery sort of idea, but with genomics. So, but then, you know, Eugene pointed out that, and also David, that, you know, if you're uncovering kind of potential risks about people's lives of BRCA or Alzheimer's, genes, then you can't just be kind of blasé and sort of off the cuff with it. So that's where we are right now, but are there ways to make it more kind of consumer friendly? That's what we're talking about, or consumer engaging more than anything else. And maybe that might kickstart a deeper clinical interest as well. That's where we are. What's your name?
So I'm Peter, and I work for a website called Check Orphan. And so our end users, people come to our site who want to focus on rare diseases. Right, so there are patients, there's doctors, there's researchers, and we provide very basic information, new drug, clinical trial information. So we came here and we're trying to figure the same thing out. What does this mean?
Yeah.
How does this fit into my world? Because people don't, no answers. And I'm talking to people trying to understand how can this be explained to my audience so they understand it and maybe can utilize some aspect of it in their lives. A lot of times there are patients trying to figure out what their diseases are. And I don't know if it fits in this space.
I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons, I guess, why we're here, trying to have a sort of more general discussion. But, you know, at the same time, it is hard when people are talking about very complex things, and, you know, they're also very, you know, we're at the very beginning here, I think, in genomics. Any ideas for Peter about how to? Yeah.
I think that I understand the danger of giving people maybe too much information or information that they can't necessarily deal with, but I do think that the genie's out the bottle, and that you can't take a science that's already part of people's lives and employment and part of the world, and you can't put it back in the bottle. So the only really rational way to deal with it is give people the information and let people who have new forms of information that might be useful to people actually distribute that, and then just inform them as to what to do with that information. Yeah, but I think again it's about education and counselling and giving the consumer more tools to deal with that level of awareness, and maybe a bit more scientific skepticism as well about what it is that they can legitimately draw from that information.
Yeah, I think there's also some big impacts from insurance. People are worried about their data getting out there, so will they get medical insurance? You know, will they be able to get a mortgage if they're identified by having a genetic disease? Are they more susceptible to getting something at an earlier age? So people are still sceptical about that as well.
It's such a kind of minefield and difficult. I mean, I guess there is a kind of skepticism, but not necessarily skepticism of the science, but skepticism of the financial. It's a shame we've lost David, who was our financial expert. So can that skepticism of the financial industry be transferred to science? And what about this kind of contingent? We don't really know. How do you communicate that?
To your point, it's not a skepticism. What I'm saying is something to explain so patients understand it, so physicians understand it, researchers understand it. Or maybe you need someone to explain it to a wider audience. And the skepticism would dissipate. they understood. Just, again, I'm trying to understand. Well, so they have a disease, or they're trying to figure out a disease, and they're looking for tools to help them better understand it. I don't know if the answers are here. So maybe they have a disease, a lysosomal storage disease, and they've gone to many different, they're small children, they're not progressing properly, and they go to a primary care doctor, they go to a neurologist, they go to all the different physicians trying to find an answer until someone finally discovers it, which could be years in the making. So are there tools here that help that solution? I don't know.
Maybe we could put this out to come and have a seat on the table of chat. Come, well, we need you. We need a wider audience here. So the question is, at the moment, Peter's got this question about how do we actually explain these things? Is there a way to make sense? Somebody with it, what do you say, a lysosomal disorder? I don't know what it is, but like some kind of rare. It could be a genetic disease, maybe it's not, but maybe there's a genomic element to it.
Most rare diseases are genetic based, so 80% of them. So usually it is genetic.
Someone's got a rare disease. There's all this knowledge here, but it's kind of impossible for them to make sense of this, or hard, at least very, very hard. But
I think the work that the Genomics England are doing on the 100,000 Genome Project is a good start for a country. They want to have a genomic service within the NHS, where Dame Sally's saying, in 2025 you'll be able to just blow into a machine at your GP and they'll send it off and you'll be able to find out what's happening. So I think you're going to have to educate your patients along the way over that journey for the next 8 or 9 years. And as discoveries come through, then it'll be on the news, and the more breakthroughs you get in this arena, they really do have to promote the success factors of that. And then I think people are quite intelligent now in terms of diagnosing themselves. Most people go on the internet and have a look. If there's new technology out there, then they'll be able to research it, and if the information's public, then they'll be able to get a better understanding of what to do. And I think that will be the future of medicine. So people partly diagnosing themselves and then getting it confirmed by their GP or by primary care.
What's the role of the clinician then, the family doctor, when someone's already, maybe they've got their home genetics kit that they've, bought online, they've spat into their vial and it's kind of processed this thing. Then they go to the doctor. I mean, what is the role then of the physician at that point?
I think their role is education in that respect. One of the things that the Human Genetics Commission, which was this sort of 8-year Royal Commission set up to look at the implications of, actually it was looking at much more basic kinds of genetic tests and screenings and pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. And what they found was that almost none of the physicians that they asked were capable or informed of giving genetic counselling to parents or prospective parents who had a heritable genetic condition. And that's really awful, because those are the first people that you go and speak to if you're worried about your fertility, or if you know that there may be something in your family that you need to talk to your doctor about. So that level of education seems really, really important, because people trust their doctors and they don't always trust people in public life, they don't always trust scientists, they don't always trust the media, but doctors are trusted, in the UK especially, and I think that their ability to counsel people on these topics is really paramount.
So never mind the public at large, we actually need... Give us a final thought.
Final thought is just that you're saying people trust their doctors, I believe, and information that comes from conferences like this have to be explained to them on how it can help their patients. And I think that patients are more likely to be receptive to getting the information from their physicians rather than from the scientists.
Do they know enough? I mean, the people that come to you, they've already spoken to their physician, and are they kind of satisfied with their level of knowledge?
They're working with their physicians to figure out what their ailment is. So I think they trust them kind of on that journey together, trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. We're here all day, so do come back if you and we might well be examining. I think it's a key question. So thank you, Peter. Come and have a seat. Just tell us who you are, at least. Just say hello. So it just looks like it's us three for now, unless we can persuade this. Yes, it's going to come. Let's give them a round of applause. Very, very minor smattering of applause. Yeah, thank you.
One place I can go.
Yeah, exactly. So we have got Saul, we've got Eugene and Mikey.
Stephen Smith.
Stephen, welcome. I mean, this is Talkaoke, it's a pop-up talk show, so we can take this in any direction we want to take it. I mean, at the moment it's about really, I guess, that wider sense of understanding of the field of genomics. Is it ever going to happen for, for the public, and what about actually, just general clinicians? Are they able to explain this? Sort of saying, kind of, well, at least in the UK, they don't seem to be up to speed yet. So that's what it's all about at the moment.
They are doing a big education program in the UK for clinicians, which the NHS has put together, lots of videos and making it very easy to understand. And they're going to, if they are going to push out this national genomic service within the UK, then everyone's going to be on board, from frontline GPs right through to nurses in hospitals. And so they're doing their best efforts to get that across.
Do people understand what you do, Stephen, when you explain to them, apart from your colleagues?
Well, I'm a software guy, a startup, and my role on the team that we're working together is to try to translate something very obscure, what's the role of PCR, base pair reads, things like that, into the conversation that might be had on an NPR podcast. Because the audience there is everyone from to the guy installing your gutters. And he, whether he knows it or not, needs to care about genetics at the same level that his geneticist that he goes to when his wife is pregnant. And that ability to translate in the software world, we call that like a viral app. What's the killer app for genetics, right? And so when we talk to investors, we talk about one that came out of Iceland. It's called the bump and pump app, right? The bump and pump, right? So imagine you walk into a bar, you see a girl, you're in Iceland. You're in Iceland because there's a very small group, there's not an enormous amount of genetic diversity within the Icelandic gene pool. And if you sequence enough of them, they have an app that lets you bump into the girl, and the app tells you whether you should go home with her, because you might be related. Right? That ability to take genetics and make it hyper-relevant to a pickup line in a bar in Iceland or Italy is the perfect application of genetics. Because the guy knows, oh, I can use this as a pickup line, and it's based in science. The ultimate app for science.
These apps, they're genetic dating sites where you are matched on your genetic makeup, nothing else, and then you go on a date. I haven't been on one.
I was never very suave in a bar, but I could have made an enormous amount of traction with an app that gave me that level of pickup line walking into a bar. But, no, it wouldn't work. It depends how far into the evening we are. For 6 beers and a couple of Guinnesses, yeah, maybe it would work. But the reality is that it gave people the ability to care about something that they would never go read the Wikipedia articles. And for us as a startup, we look at how do we get the same level of traction around something that you need to care about, but most people don't.
Collaboration with Tinder or something like that, where it's not necessarily the sole, but it's just like an extra add-on, like like the cherry on the cake, so to speak. Does that work? I mean, what is the
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I
genetic diversity when you
Well, that's true. I am related to marriage to my wife, so that wasn't a problem with genetics. No, not really. But the idea that would work is such a geek fantasy. It's never going to work as a pickup line. I'm sorry, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I think that would be one of the most creepy pickup lines I can possibly imagine. We are not yet genetically related. That would improve it very much. I really don't.
I mean, you're a human snap interaction. Have you got any tips for Stephen about how to improve his pickup lines?
Well, yeah, I would say.
Not dating him.
No, okay. Nor am I. So I'm not. I'm not an authority either. But I don't think that those kind of mechanistic approaches or utilitarian arguments have any bearing on whether somebody's likely to. I think if they are proffered as a dating pickup line, it actually is kind of would have the opposite effect. I don't know. I mean, I actually, as well as being a geek myself, I mean, I did a computer science PhD, PhD in the computer science department last year, and I'm also a swing dancer. And I've noticed the two questions you can ask at a swing dance event are, how long have you been dancing, and where did you do your computer science PhD? Because so many people do it. And the reason they do it is because it's sort of formulaic. You know, if you're a socially awkward person, you have a 3 to 5 minute dance with somebody. You go, you ask them, it's all sanctioned, it's allowed, you're meant to ask them to dance. You do this, you get to actually get involved, not in a creepy way, but in a way. So it's great for people who find normal kinds of dating procedures problematic. So I think that would be one thing. Somehow to sort of. Well, I would just say in terms of marketing the bump and hump app, I'd say that it needs like one level of abstraction beyond the sort of basic genetic compatibility. Exactly. It just needs some little mirage of respectability on top of the sort of brute facts of our immediate congress and what would result from it.
The reason I mentioned that app is because we're trying to get people. When we talk to investors, there's two types of money that startup raises, right? There's what we call smart money, which is, for me, smart money is a PhD in biochemistry who has $200 million and is willing to invest. I don't have to train him on why genetics is important and why we're going to be spending more over time on genetics as a country and as a nation and as a continent, right? And then there's also dumb money, and dumb money is someone who has a lot of money but doesn't know anything about genetics. And it doesn't matter how much I tell them how big the market is, they don't believe me, right? So when we think about how we have a conversation, if I'm only talking to scientists, they get it. They know. Yeah. So we play around, you mentioned, I love the topic, is genomics ready for the masses? And you asked, well, how do we get people to care? So last year I sat in the kitchen with an old partner of mine, and he was in this very interesting position where he'd just taken a trip to Mexico, and his wife was pregnant. And if you roll your brain back a little bit, Zika came out of Mexico, out of the actual where his resort was sitting, right? So he wasn't going to talk to his GP or his doctor for another week. He sat in hell for a week, right? And so the first place he's going to go is Wikipedia. He's going to start Googling. Now at that point, there really was no way to screen someone who may have been exposed to this and was in the first trimester. There was literally nothing. He sat in hell for 3 weeks until it became clear, literally the science was catching up on a daily basis. Well, the ability to give people to understand this obscure thing called genetics, right? Which is just a massive minefield of scariness for people, because you find out you have the broken X gene, right? Your grandmother had it. It didn't show up in your generation. You don't know why. Those conversations cause an enormous amount of angst. And if scientists, I'm not a scientist, I'm a programmer, can find a way to market it, literally at the America's Got Talent kind of market, and the thing you don't have to think about, you feel, that's when genetics is relevant. Is it relevant?
I guess I think it is that thing about feeling it. It's hard to sort of feel it, and that's, I guess,
People have been kind of talking around just now. How do you actually make it more female?
I'd say parenting is a much better target there because parents, there's nothing like, okay, parenting is a wonderful, beautiful thing. There's nothing like romantic and fussing about screaming bloody affair. So people are prepared for a tense and anxious time. So anything that they can do to make themselves feel at least a bit in control is probably going to be a great thing. And it's just the opposite of dating. It's almost like kind of reverse end, at which point I think everybody would be well up for getting some information about what's about to happen, and your friend that's a great example.
There's also that risk, isn't there, where you're playing God and looking at genetics in early pregnancy, and then you've got that decision very early on, haven't you, where you've actually got an option rather than going full term and then the option's taken away from you. So there's still that debate around genetic modification, CRISPR, or do you just not find out, or is it a benefit to find out?
You have to find out. It's, as I said, the genie goes in the bottle. I mean, I kind of see this because my dad's got muscular dystrophy, and there's like 50% and neither was big, but he knew that and decided to go ahead with it anyway. And as a disabled person, he's very interested in these kinds of bioethics debates. He was on that Human Genetics Commission, which finished in 2005, so it's very out of date. And his position, even though the UK kind of disability organisation generally came out against the implementation of they still had to say in the end, you can't really legislate about parents' choices, and in fact all you can do is educate them so that the decisions that they make are at least ethically considered and not just decided by a committee somewhere. So yeah, I think you have to give people information and let them make what they will, because humans and they have the rational capability to deal with it if you educate them.
So there recently was a podcast on NPR around the broken X gene. It's this thing that's passed on. It's a very strange thing because it causes massive growth defects, it causes problems, but it also gets worse as it passes down the term line. So every generation, the outbreak or the expression of this gene is even worse. So there's a lot. So the podcast was talking about the conversations this woman had before she even started dating, and about literally how empty the space was, where she could understand, how do I even go talk to a young man around the fact that I'm carrying this time bomb and I still want to have kids, and they still decided to have kids and to keep it, right? Which was I don't know if I have the mental understanding to hold that in my head. That's a huge number of ethical conversations. But I think that I've always respected the UK because the UK has taken an analytical approach to looking at when do we do mastectomies, when do we treat prostate cancer. We don't just throw money at it, we don't just throw effort. Everyone gets the same. They take a more systemic approach to it. But I think that genetics information is the thing that very, very easily people could say we shouldn't be sharing this, because someone might make a decision to not have a child or go abort it early in vitro on something they read on the Wikipedia. And I think there's a push to say maybe we shouldn't share that information because they might make a decision that's less informed, except that less informed is part of the whole decision process.
When, in a way, that's the thing with genomics, is the information is so, everyone is less informed. There's no such thing as fully informed, because it just can't be with that amount of information. So in that case, how do you deal with this knowledge? Can you help parents in the end say, this is the partial information, it's still up to you to make the decision? Do you withhold that information?
Depending on how well they understand the consequences of what you do, or are they making the choices right based on their current situation, financial situation, relationship situation? There's a whole host of things that they've got to take into account, whereas maybe that's just a tipping point. Now they've got their genetic information, it's easy for them to just say no or carry on.
I mean,
few different things. So the things that you've just mentioned, some of those are kind of sociological issues, like to do with how well supported will somebody with this genetic condition be in this society. Will they be able to operate as a fully autonomous human being without spending their lives in an institution or needing constant supervision or something like that? Can they afford it? So there's another question about how the resources in the society are distributed. And then there's also relationships. I think that's such an important point because disability plays out in relationships. You know, having a disabled child is a major issue, or being a disabled parent, as I've seen, is a major issue in terms of how your family life works and the sorts of negotiations you have to have with your partner or with your children in later life. But then there's also this question of scientific understanding, which I think is slightly different. That's about understanding. I think you need a basic understanding of the kinds of statistics that are used and what population genetics means for the choices that you make. Like, what are the risks associated with things? People are bad at understanding those. Anybody who's read Daniel Kahneman sees that people can't make decisions on the basis of that kind of information. So it's a really broad spectrum problem, and I don't know quite whether it can all be dealt with in any systematic way. So my inclination would be to let people deal with it and actually try and mop up the consequences afterwards. I know that that's an unpopular position. Make the information available, see what the problems are that come out of it, and then try and deal with them afterwards. Because otherwise, you do get people making decisions on the basis of Wikipedia articles or the sorts of like little accidental releases of information that just happen around the edges of a topic, and that's in a way that's worse.
But China's done this, right? Around very simple genetic modification called gender, right? They've skewed their entire parts of their population to have a larger percentage of men, right? The social ramifications, societal ramifications of having 2% more men are global, right? We have more wars because you have more men, right? You have fewer men going off and working in certain types of jobs because they cannot enter society without marriage as a certificate, right? So we were already doing this. But I think that maybe as we have more, a larger surface of genetics to work from, than any one thing, like CRISPR, right? CRISPR opens the valve. There are some people you would ask, would you modify the color of the hair of your child? Maybe not. Would you, if you could guarantee your child doesn't need these, doesn't need glasses? I mean, to think about it, of course, I want a germline change that solves this problem, right? Because I don't want him to have what I have, right? And especially when you look at more rare diseases that cause like macular degeneration at like 30, of course I want to do this. And then the arguments for it are so much larger. There's an economic issue around the loss of productivity. So I personally think maybe as you were saying, the more information the better. We're going to have a dirty outcome on certain things. Yeah. But as a whole, we have the ability to moderate it.
But I mean, I think that's fine. But I think Saul's point about this kind of statistical maybe yes, maybe no. You know, like what was maybe genes for myopia, maybe it's anything else. We don't know. Are you going to mess around with that? Or, you know, even a more serious macular degeneration gene is unlikely to be that simple or that cut and dry.
We don't know whether that one gene was quieting some other really bad gene 4 years down the expression. We don't know, right? We could literally solve nearsightedness and end up with something that was much incredibly worse. But I personally think what's going to happen whether we have control over it or not.
All right, well, thanks very much. You can give us a final thought.
I think genomics is ready for the masses. It's just going to be an education piece that we've got to do on a global scale.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what would be the starting point of that? It's the very most basic.
I think start at schools.
Yeah.
Secondary school, teenagers, and give them the options to study bioinformatics at secondary school, and get them to teach courses in genetics, so as they become adults they're a lot more aware.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
I would love to see a curated podcast on the ethics and economics of NGS.
Yeah.
Because I listen to podcasts nonstop. I used to work at NPR. I love their ability to feed my brain with thought-provoking things. The same way St. Paul Krugman does both the New York Times and economics. But NGS sequencing comes down to humans' behavior and it comes down to economics. Both of which are things we're all capable of understanding.
It's funny because that was your opening point in a way, isn't it?
Well, I think that's a brilliant idea, actually. I'm actually thinking of something. I was thinking of, Humans of New York. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to do something that brings out individual choices, impacts, the choices that people make given their socioeconomic situation, relating to their genetic conditions? I think that would be a very compelling podcast. You should do it.
I wish I had that. I wish I had that
Well, I
gene.
mean, maybe somehow, maybe these guys over here with the camera, maybe they could make the podcast. Would you come and have a seat? Come and tell us what you're doing. At the moment, we've come up with this idea. There needs to be a genomics podcast that actually deals with human stories, so that people can actually come around. Yeah, that people come and get involved in this. You can tell us about Formulatrix as well at the same time. Do you need a podcast? So, what's your name?
Julian Stewart.
Julian.
Filming.
Okay. Well, I mean, could there be how about this? Just going to turn this down. Stephen suggested the idea that, and Saul's kind of in and out as well, so there's a little bit of excitement right now. Could you have a kind of, is this what is going to get the interest in genomics up in the general population? If you had human stories that actually explained difficult decisions that parents need to make, or each week it could be about a different genetic thing, do you think that would work as a way to actually?
Probably. I'm not an expert on this field.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm completely not an expert at all.
But you're an expert, I guess, in making
Okay,
shows.
I'll throw something in. And this is very left field, I probably won't have any supporters here. Isn't this all about, in the end, designer babies? Getting rid of human, problems in their DNA, and we all end up looking the same in 50 years' time.
I think it's an interesting assumption that we all go to, but it's very possible, given the hair color fads in Boston, that we may actually end up with more colors than less colors of hair in 100 years. Like, I wouldn't assume we'd all be blonde and tall and blue-eyed. We might actually be things that no one would ever want now, but someone would want later. I think it's...
Yeah, so you think that design the baby doesn't necessarily lead to homogeneity?
No, I mean, look, Instagram and Twitter have proven that humans have an infinite ability to want to communicate their uniqueness. I mean, we literally... who would have thought that 144 characters was something that anyone would want to communicate in? If you had told me that as a startup, I would have not invested, right? I would have stayed as far away from it as possible, but I was 100% wrong, right? And so I think that humans like variability, specifically if I was moving to an environment where I needed variability, right?
Yeah. Also, if you look at what parents do the minute the kid comes out, and actually what all the friends of the parents do as well. Oh, does he look like his dad? Does he look like his mum? Yeah. Does he look like his grandma? Does he look like his grandpa? Irrespective of how hideous the mum, dad, grandma or grandpa are. So clearly people are interested in the self-similarity of their children, rather than necessarily designing somebody to look like, whatever the paradigm is.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's come back to this question that we were talking about before, which is this kind of thing, if your baby has got, or you're worried about particular genetic defects, and we were talking just before you arrived there, that often it's not just a simple question of like, let's, it won't be in the future, let's cut out this gene. There's just not enough knowledge there. It's hard to communicate that sort of sense of uncertainty. So I think what these guys were saying, that if you kind of like could communicate that in a human way, like the parents trying to decide, make that decision about, do we edit this gene, or do we decide to have children, do we terminate this pregnancy, whatever it is, would that be a compelling story that people would actually kind of
have that story all the time anyway? I hear that in the news. Little Jimmy's got this passed down disease, it runs in the family. But my question is, where does it stop? At what point do we say, do you know what? We're going on the wrong route? Because the medical profession, as far as I can see it, they have a financial vested interest, private healthcare, to go down that route. They can do more.
Okay, what do people think? Where does it stop? Is it we talked a bit earlier on about letting the genie out of the bottle. Is it going to lead to this kind of
dystopian models are that one group of people have access and they get an inherited and persistent advantage that allows them what we have in the United States. It's actually called white, right? Louis C.K. said if you were born white, you were born with every silver spoon in your mouth or something along that lines. I mean, we already see this, right? We're not breeding for it. It happened. And maybe if we had more variability, you would have a drop in the majority. Right? You would see a tactical advantage for your child every day. The thing that we haven't seen yet is we always assume that if CRISPR comes out into the world, that we have never seen anyone feel the pain of CRISPR, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you solved these 4 things, and your child is beautiful until 17, and then they had this disease that there's only 15 of them in the world to have it, right? They quieted a gene, and they quieted another gene, and then they had a combination that we could never have anticipated. And Mother Nature probably would have weeded this out a long time ago because it solved that problem. But no one's ever had to solve the downside, right? So everybody can go rushing into a CRISPR situation where blue eyes is something everyone wants. Or maybe the ability to have your tattoos disappear every 3 years so you can tattoo, like it's like an enormous number of things you can get. But no one's ever had the downside story that says, oh, yeah, you know, Larry did that. Larry's not happy. But as a parent, I am entirely aware that decisions I make can have an incredibly painful impact on my child. We allow you to vote in some countries once you have kids because you have something to lose. CRISPR, it can sound like, yeah, I flip a magic switch and I get something I want, but someone pays the price, the child and the adult, and in the end, society, right? Okay. So I don't know where it ends. I've lived long enough to see where it goes.
I mean, will that kind of sense of the downside, once it gets out there, will it then not, maybe deter this design a baby thing when people realise it's not as simple?
I agree with your first point, which is that the downside's already out there, and that we've been doing genetic selection through sexual selection for years, and not necessarily based on health outcomes, but based on all kinds of strange sociological and historical factors. And maybe the genie's just so far out the bottle already that adding CRISPR to the mix isn't gonna cause us to deal with anything that we're not already having to deal with, or anything that's in a different order of stuff that we already do.
We've got any face to the table? Hello, what's your name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer, we've got Saul, we've got Julian, we've got Stephen, and Mikey. At the moment we're talking about, we started off actually, we got Julian down. Are you going to go? Okay, well, give us a final thought before you go. Anyway, yeah, give us a thought.
Well, as I said, I'm not an expert. I'm here filming it. But I do see that in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, in the medical case of this particular comment that you were saying earlier on, I don't know about it, but I can sort of understand. It will only get bigger, and people, hard luck stories about Jimmy's going to die at the age of 10 and so on. Is it right? Probably not. I haven't a clue.
So you're concerned about
Well, I just think I can see the medical profession has got an incentive to go down that route, and pull the heartstrings. But I wonder where it's going to win. I take your point about us all ending up being white or whatever, but I don't know.
Okay. So Jennifer, just explain what's going on, because that probably didn't make that much sense. At the moment we're talking about, we started off, well, that was a long way. The sort of kind of core question has been about getting, I guess, the public more interested in the science of genomics and about, does it make sense to them? The answer is most of the time not. How do we actually do it? We've had a lot of different ideas and suggestions over this session. What we were talking about, the reason we got Julian involved is actually because we're talking about this idea of a podcast. And maybe if you make some of these things more human and more accessible with personal stories about difficult choices, maybe that would bring a more kind of, I used to work for NPR, so I'll give a caveat. There are several podcasts that are available through NPR or just through podcasting. One of them is called Freakonomics. There's another one called How It's Made, and there's a third one called What I Missed in History Class.
if those 3 podcast creators came together and had a baby podcast, right? That brought together, a designer baby podcast that had it talked to me about the impact of medical decisions on the economy. That's part of the way we think about the larger relationship between people. And it talked to me about the personal aspect of how people on the ground, when they get pregnant or when they go talk to their geneticist about some issue, and this literally is a conversation that happens more and more often, how those things played out, pull it out of the soundbite that you get out of like Twitter or NBC or Facebook, and pull it into, let's think about this deep. It's not a 5-minute conversation. And if you go listen to some of the things that the women who run the What I Missed in History class, which is literally the greatest podcast on the face of Europe, you realize they spend 45 minutes explaining the intricacies of how sewing machines and patent law came together in the 1800s. That level of detail I've never heard around NGS or sequencing. But there is plenty of information. The meat for that conversation is huge.
I mean, it's quite clear it's a very deep subject, almost infinitely deep. But are people ready and willing to actually go that deep? I don't know. Have you got any views on this, Jennifer?
Oh, I think people are ready. I don't understand much about genomics. I myself am just a sort of a rare disease advocate.
Right.
So I'm at the very bottom phase of learning about it. So.
I mean, it's interesting because we had someone earlier on, a guy called Peter, that was in a similar situation, that he's got a website, that's trying to sort of link some of the genomic science with people that have got rare diseases. And his problem was he didn't have the tools to actually communicate the depth and the science. Maybe a podcast would be one of it, I don't know. But I mean, do you have that same problem, that you don't have the tools to actually explain to people with these rare diseases what the research is and the kind of nuances of statistics and stuff like that?
Well, I don't understand it myself, so I need to be taught this. And I don't know that there's anyone in our group who can actually do that explaining. So that's sort of where I think, at least that's where I'm coming from, is I don't really understand it, and that's actually why I'm here, is to learn more about it. And with everything going into gene therapy, which now that's the direction of things, I need to understand how it all works. And I don't have the background.
Okay, so there is that gap. I mean, a podcast might work. There is that kind of gap between all this fascinating stuff going on and actually how it's explained and translated to people like Jennifer. Are you advocating for a particular rare disease or?
Yeah, I am a blood disorder. This PK deficiency.
Right. Okay. Can you say a little bit about that?
About the disorder?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a hemolytic anemia, and there's a missing enzyme or a lack of working enzyme, so the red blood cells break down very quickly.
Right.
Which causes the patient many times to be very anemic.
Right.
So it depends. There's a mild to a severe range of that.
Okay.
The impact of severe anemia for a layman.
I guess one of the biggest symptoms would be just having fatigue. Many of the patients have jaundice, so they're going yellow, their eyes are yellow, their skin's yellow. Exercise tolerance is low, iron overload, so iron kind of congregating in the different organs, which results in pretty significant organ damage. So that's probably one of the most severe side effects of it.
Right. Okay. Is there anything that would help? I mean, what do you think? Because I spoke to Peter earlier on, who was kind of in a similar position, and I said, well, what are the tools? How can you find out more, make it easier to communicate to the people coming to you? And he said, I don't have any tools. I'm kind of stuck. So, I mean, is it a similar situation?
I think it's very similar. I think that, but I do like the idea of, I think videos and podcasts, I mean, that's everybody YouTubes everything now. So to me, having that available is enormous. And be able to get that out to patients, get that out to researchers.
Any thoughts for Jennifer on this one?
I mean, it's a conversation. As a blog, I started a company in the bioinformatics. We are always thinking about how we Obama's office, patented, but I worked on the software that was used to impact a group of people. And I think about that period of time. I used to go to a party, and my wife was a travel agent, so we went to a party. They don't care about the software developer, but they always go talk to my wife, who is a travel agent. So she was, that seemed like I became a very, very interested person to talk to. Didn't really know how much, but I was part of that large community that was happening. And I always reflect on that, and how do you get people out of I would go to the dating people are a geologist, you can literally walk her back up as I said the word geologist. But genetics is more sexy. Well, it wouldn't have been genetics. If I said I was a geneticist, she would have backed up equally fast. And she may have asked me politely what was my favorite rock, as far as the conversation would have gone. But it's a thought process. My partner, who's floating around here somewhere, he and I literally think, how do we get one non-scientist to be passionate and to be an advocate for another non-scientist, right? So I would for my mission on the way in which we think about this, and this ties into how we get people to think about rare diseases, is if someone talks and understands viscerally what we're trying to do, what we're trying to solve, genetics at scale to solve major health issues, if they go off and tell someone else passionate about what we're doing, and it comes back to a scientist who says, I never would have heard about mean stuff, except that my wife's friend at a book party ran across it. That's the goal.
Come and have a seat. Let's have a chat. At the moment, we're talking about how to explain what's going on here to people that maybe don't understand the science. Why are you not the right people? Do you understand what's going on here? What's your name, We've got Stephen, we've got Jennifer, we've got Saul, my name's Mikey. At the moment we're talking about this problem. Like Jennifer is a rare disease advocate for a particular kind of anemia. And you're going around here and just sort of like trying to find out a bit more about the science. But there's like a big gap between all these machines and all this computing, and you're all trying to solve the problem of how to deal with this disease. So how do it's not being communicated at the moment. How do you actually communicate that better? Understand what's going on?
Some questions? So I'm not a scientist. So are you both scientists?
We're high school students, actually. We're from New York, and in New York there's this program called New Visions, and we're high school seniors, so seniors from different schools in New York, close to the capital. We get accepted to this program, and I'm from a scientific research and World Health program. She's from a medical program, and so we do things like go to trips like these, and we go on rotations and listen to professors speak about their work and their research. So this is kind of what we're here for. We're just looking at the place.
Since you've been here, of all the booths here and all the talks that are going on, which talk were you able to get into the most? Like, were you able to get the most out of? Because I know when I go to these conferences, I sometimes have to tell people, hey, if I was an NPR reporter, tell me what you tell the reporter. And it's a conversation starter that many scientists are never asked. Look, dumb it down to the point where I care or I can understand it. So I wonder, what here has grabbed your interest?
We actually haven't been able, we haven't gone to a talk yet. We just got here about an hour ago, so we're still in the booths, but everyone's very friendly, and they talk about their instruments in a way that we can understand it, and they can describe their research. Everyone's so passionate about it, so they make it very simple to understand.
So the passion's actually quite important.
To make you interested,
yeah.
Okay. People who are into science and for people who are into research themselves, they can really get into this and see all the really cool machines that they have. Some of them are for micro pipettes, and they can actually pick up the micro pipette and make it very accurate, because that's kind of a problem these days. You don't get as many accurate results because just an error right here, or if you're picking up something viscous and there's left over from the pipette, then that's kind of a problem. So all of these companies, some of them are coming up with really cool technologies to kind of avoid this problem.
I mean, what do you think about the question of communicating science to people that are not? Hold that question for a second.
I think this is one of the nicest features of this conference, the ability to get people to come up and pull their ideas out of them. It's not can't be an easy job, but it's great.
Well, I mean, I think it's quite often when it's not an easy job, it's a more necessary job, and I think in a field like this where there's so much knowledge, but it's so diverse and it's so much in these like the pipettes. I think is a great example. Like someone's thought really, really hard about how to actually make that happen, but that's got a link with people like Jennifer that have got this one disease that they're advocating for. They want to find out more. It's got a link with people that are into software and designing kind of these artificial intelligences, and so much knowledge here in the room. The question is how to connect it all together, and I think that's in a way the key question that we're asking today. So yeah, thanks. And we're here all day, so come back if you find out, if you've got any more thoughts, come back. So yeah, I mean, the communicating of this, do you think it's done well? Could it be improved, and how could it be improved?
I don't know how it's going to be improved. I'm sure it can, but my thing is almost exactly what you're saying. Because I don't have a science background, and I do have to interact with researchers and scientists and business people, and though a lot of the language is over my head, quite frankly. I don't understand it all, and in order to really advocate for my disorder, I need to understand it better.
Yeah. Okay. Any tips? Any ideas? How to communicate a bit, to understand it better? Is it just going deep, as Stephen said before?
Yeah, well, I think just like conferences like these and like getting people who don't have a science background to like make them aware of it, and that's where I think a lot of help will come from, like marketing people, just like getting the word out, and then just talk. Talk will help make anything better.
Do you have a problem explaining some of the things that you're interested in to maybe your non-science friends?
I mean, sure, but as long as I think nowadays, especially with like media and like being able to go on the internet, you just like look anything up in simpler terms. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. That's what we matter. Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. Okay. And Nancy, do you feel the same?
Yeah, I do feel the same.
You're doing research here. What is it? Are you thinking about going into genomics? What's your kind of like area? Are you already in genomics? What's your area of research? Come and sit down. come and get involved as well. So we've got Jennifer, we've got Elizabeth, we've got Nancy. Mine's Mikey. What's your name? Ruth. I guess at the moment we're talking about, one of the big subjects that we talked about earlier on is this question about science knowledge just in the world. Do people know enough about science? Do they understand the uncertainties of science, the way that you can have? Sometimes it's a maybe, and it's hard sometimes for the public to take. Like it might be this, it might be that. Don't really know. Can you communicate that? Can you communicate statistics, things like that, to a wider?
The misconceptions are huge.
Yeah.
People really don't understand, and they make assumptions based on what they've heard or they think they understand.
What would you say the big assumptions are? The big misconceptions?
I think it's almost a sense of magical thinking. It's somehow out there, and they don't really embrace it, and they can't really understand what the essence of it is. They don't have the background, I think. They really don't. So because they don't have the background, they assume certain things, like the speed, for example, of discovery. They don't really understand that it's quite slow and frustrating. I think young people going into science need to know that.
I guess when you're presented this complexity, that's a kind of different. You get a sense of that here. What do other people think are there? Come and have a seat on the table of chat. Come on. We have got. We've got Nancy. We've got Elizabeth. We've got Jennifer. Was it Ruth? Mikey. What's your name?
Autumn. Zoe.
So at the moment, come and have a seat. Come and get involved. the moment, I mean, there's a few subjects on the table. We're talking about, is all the science that's happening here being communicated as well as it could be? Is it just too complicated to actually communicate any better? Then there's a question about the public at large. Do they know enough about science? And do they actually, is there a way to get people better informed about science, but especially genetic science and genomics? We've got some new faces around the table. What's your name?
Emma.
And
Olivier.
And
Angelica.
And we've got Ruth, Jennifer, Elizabeth, Nancy, Autumn, and Zoe. And I'm Mikey. So yeah, I mean, what do people think about that? We're talking about a really science communication. Could it be done better? Anybody? What do you think? Could it be done better?
It could always be done better.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, so how? That's a more difficult question. Well, I mean, what do people think? I mean, do you think is it done well here?
Most of it is like explained really professionally for students,
Yeah.
so it could be broken down more for like the general public too.
Yeah. I mean, what sort of things need to be broken down?
Like the terminology and stuff that they use, not everybody understands.
Yeah. Okay, so in a way, there's too much jargon going on, like acronyms and stuff like that. Okay. Do you agree with that?
I do. It would be nice if they had like a big vocabulary board.
Yeah.
It would really be helpful. For those of us like ourselves, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of space here. You could kind of hang it.
This space board?
Yeah, you can
I think we call it word walls in my classroom.
Yeah. So you could have a word wall. Would that be a good way?
Sure.
Yeah. Would that work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I go to rotations a lot where there are professors speaking, we take notes, and we have lots of vocabulary. They talk with such so professionally. So, you know, it'd be nice to just kind of help people get a real understanding of what everything means.
Okay, so a word wall and sort of explanations. There could be. Well, look, we've got all this empty space. Could it work there? What do people think on this side? What other things would help people to understand things a bit more? I mean, are you getting it? Are you picking it all up? Do you think you have got?
I think that like everyone that we've talked to is like they're very approachable and you can ask them questions if you need to. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely been the question, and people over here have said there's been a lot of passion in this space. That actually people have got the passion, and that helps communicate things. I think.
The lecture I went to over in the Loop was wonderful. I don't know if any of you went to that one where we broke down into discussion groups, which the speakers like basically just jumped around to different groups, which is fabulous. So it was all conversation.
Yeah. So
and we could ask questions, and we just like actually very similar to what we're doing here.
So actually, some of that face-to-face conversation, kind of, because then you can look at people, and if they're looking a bit blank. I mean, the main thing we've been hearing today is that we've talked to bioinformatics people, talk to diagnostics people, and then when they say what they do to people that are just like non-professionals, they just kind of go like that. So, they've got a problem too that needs solving in a way. That how do they make it more understandable for the world at large? Translate. Some kind of translation.
I talk to my parents about what I do on an everyday basis at New Visions. I just learn so much every day. So, I go and tell them about it. And sometimes they just look at me. Well, my mom looks at me and she says, I don't know what you're telling me. It's like a new language. That's sort of what science what it is. It's like a new language. It's so broad, really.
So in a way, it is like a new language, and you need the same, maybe, things that you do when you're learning a new language, like a translator.
A lot of the times they don't even realize that we're high school students.
Yeah.
So when we do tell them, they're really surprised that we're actually attending these events and listening to these lectures.
Yeah. I mean, should there be more things like the big word wall? Maybe you could get some professional translators in that could go around with you and say, this is what this person's actually saying. Yeah, like a tour guide sort of thing, Would that work?
I like that.
Would that?
One thing that sort of helps is like going around. I've sort of been starting to
tell the people that I'm younger than most of the people here, so they sort of like give us an overview of what they're doing and.
So in a way, it's important to say really where you're coming from, in a sense. Okay. And what's been the most interesting thing that people have heard so far? Has there been anything?
Have you been to
There's a group that's set up at the coffee shop. Saliva. It's like DNA extraction, and they can sequence unfortunately, wish I did. Yeah, of course.
And that's, I guess, one question that has also been here is like, if you've got access to it, would you want to have access to all this genetic information that might be telling you, you know, awful things about your potential, you know, about what your children might get, or you know, what diseases you might get in later life? Would you want to have that information? Come and have a seat.
All right.
This is Talkaoke. At the moment we're talking about, in a way, really communication. It started off with this question about, well, actually, it started off with a guy called Nathan, who, you know, was telling the story when he's a bioinformatics guy, and when he tells people what he does, they kind of just go like that. And then the whole sort of next 2 hours, we've been trying to work out, can it be communicated better? Can the science here be communicated better? We've actually just recently come up with a whole quite good idea. It's like, there should be a big wall hanging down with like a glossary of all the terms and all the different ideas could be explained on a big wall or something like that. There should be kind of tour guides or translators. You know, this is what actually this person's talking about when they're using like 3 or 4 different acronyms in one sentence. There could be something. That's what we're talking about at the moment. Anyway, what's your name?
Yeah, I'm Brendan Gallagher. Hello. Talkaoke participants. Yeah, I know. I think that's really tough because what bioinformatics means, like that definition is very loose. So some people would be like, oh, I'm a bioinformatician. I process raw data into, you know, more readily accessible data. Or I'm a bioinformatician. I look at microarray data. You know, it could be anything, biology and data. So when I communicate with people, I tailor it to who they are, right? So like a genetic counselor doesn't care about a lot of things, right, that someone else would very much care about, but and vice versa. So the field's really complex, and everyone literally cares about their little different vertical, and so it's really hard to message to them in a way that they understand it, like besides, so then if you have a huge glossary, right, it's like, if you're a genetic counselor, if you're a doctor, if you're a researcher, if you're a wet lab technician, if you're a PhD student, it's like, and maybe PhD student is more broad, right? But if you're in these specific verticals, you know, I would organize it that way because people shouldn't care about, like, if you're a genetic counselor, you don't care what kind of server is producing this, you know.
Okay. Any questions for Brendan? We were earlier on. We were just sort of saying, you know, the face-to-face in a way, what kind of works better to actually. Oops, thank you. Actually, works better as a way to actually get this knowledge across. So, has anyone got? I mean, we don't really know. What do you do?
I was a molecular biologist, and then I helped develop a cancer drug. That got approved in Europe like 3 days ago, so I don't have to knock on anything anymore. It's fantastic. And then it'll probably be approved in America in January. And then now I'm in business development for life sciences software. So like that's like for me, I match, you know, what I'm talking about to the person that I'm talking to, so that they.
Tell us about this. What does the cancer drug do? Can you explain?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's a precision cancer drug. So if a cancer. You know, there's many different, like just imagine there's like 10 things bad that happen to the cell, and then if 7 of those things happen, right, then you have cancer, right? And it could be any 7 combination. It's all different kinds of things, right? And so our drug is like some cancer has different cancers have different Achilles heels, right? So our drug targets cancers that overexpress a cell receptor called somatostatin, and so we have the ligand to somatostatin, which is like a key, like a keyhole. Like if the cancer is a ball of cells, right? It has a ton of keyholes, and then we have the key, and we deliver radioactive lutetium to it, which is a random element that mostly no one's heard of, but it's radioactive, and then those waves, like radioactivity is like waves of energy, and DNA is held together, right, with bonds, and it breaks those bonds, and so then the DNA is broken, and then those cells can no longer divide, and they die. So it's a targeted, it's changed, it's called a peptide radionuclide receptor therapy, and if you have someone who is a somatostatin positive cancer patient, which is typically a subset of carcinoid patients, this will work fantastically. So like Novartis has a drug called Sandostatin, and that drug is a somatostatin ligand that's basically a cold peptide, and you distinguish between hot and cold is radioactive and non-radioactive. So basically if any cancer patient is on Sandostatin, this is kind of like a way better version of that. And the clinical trials have shown that it'll do like Sandostatin, it's like 5 times better for your life. Like you live like 5 times longer. That's not evaluated by the FDA, maybe 3 times longer conservatively.
Can I just ask, do people get what Brendan's saying? Do they really? I don't know. To me, that sounds very, very complicated to me. I mean, and obviously I take it that treating cancer is going to be complicated, but I don't know. Are people picking up what Brendan's putting down? Can you explain it to me, maybe? And we've got a new face to the table. What's your name?
Judy Cohn. I'm an RN, retired,
Okay.
and an information advocate for us to have our own information.
Okay, well, in a way, that's what we're talking about. But one of the problems is how do we actually communicate this information when, like, I appreciate you've broken it down in the simplest forms. I still don't get it. I think you're doing a good job, and I think we're all impressed with that. But it's so complicated. How do you actually explain these very, very complicated ideas? I mean, has anyone got any questions?
Does your ligand bond to a monoclonal antibody that you produced?
No, it's a peptide. Yeah, it's a peptide. So monoclonal antibody is basically like re-engineered. It's like your immune system has antibodies, right? And it goes and finds a specific thing about a cell, and it says, I target this for destruction. So a peptide is just a small, like basically the molecules that are active that will find the bind. So just like as little atoms as possible to make the drug active. So it's really tiny. And you just synthesize it. So like an antibody you make, like cells make it. So like Amgen, like a biotech is typically like make antibody drugs, whereas a pharmaceutical company traditionally would make like chemistry-based drugs. So this is kind of chemistry-based.
So I think I'm starting. Well, any other questions?
I have a question. What is the difference between a small molecule drug and a large molecule drug?
I don't know. I'm sure it's so like ours is a peptide. It's really tiny. I don't know.
You've got a very, very.
I don't know I've never heard of a large molecule drug. Maybe because it's harder to do large molecule drugs exist.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I mean, you're asking that. I mean, I don't know. Okay.
The small molecules are the ones that we weren't familiar with, like aspirin or ibuprofen and that type of thing, which have a specific action and, pharmacological activity is kind of known. The larger molecules tend to be peptides, although it seems that you have a very small peptide, but it's still likely to be classed as a large molecule. So monoclonal.
Okay, we're talking about the size of molecule here. We've got a new face to say. What's your name?
Ramya. Ramya.
Do you know anything about molecules?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. When it comes to a drug, are they big molecules or small molecules?
It could be both, It could be both. I think when we pointed out that the MADs, the monoclonal antibodies, they're relatively larger with respect to, some kind of chemical compound maybe.
What's your field of research? Where are you?
Well, I work on transcriptomics. I'm into gene profiling and stuff. That's why I do single cell RNA sequence analysis.
Do you sometimes have a challenge trying to communicate what you do to people who are not experts?
I try to break it down, like tell a story. It's getting easier now.
Yeah.
Not when I started science.
So why is it getting easier? Because you're better at telling the story, or is it because
Maybe my understanding also is improved. So it's two-way. It's like I think both my understanding has improved and I'm able to tell a story better. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're talking about how to tell. So we've got a new face. What's your name?
I'm Jonathan Ahrensmeyer.
Can I call you Jonathan? Is that okay? John, okay. At the moment we're talking about, like, there's a few things. We've got, it's Brendan, isn't it? Yeah, we've got Brendan who's actually just got a new anti-cancer drug approved. I'm trying to understand a little bit about how it works. But there's also this broader question about, can we involve, non-scientists more in some of this science? And what are the ways to actually communicate these things? I mean, you're talking about telling more of a story, and we heard a lot about this question of passion, meeting people face to face as well. Seems to be a good way of doing it. I mean, and that's what we're really talking about at the moment. Could we communicate it better? Could we understand about what are the things that actually get people to understand? How do we break it down? So that's what we're talking about at the moment. Have you got a view on this?
Well, I've practiced nursing for 32 years in the trenches, and every patient requires from our corporations the diagnosis of knowledge deficit. And so I'm an advocate for us to have this knowledge, and you're asking how to communicate it. Well, I'm talking about the knowledge that lies under our skin, our genetic and omic, which includes everything. And so I've been working on the language that will be, that we need to teach to children K through 12. And a school nurse can do this with the bank of computers, and kids can learn to put their omic record together as they grow up.
So you think that kids should actually be getting this information as part of part of their school?
Yeah, and all of us need a platform where, and to have our data available, we need to sample our own data and donate it.
So in a way we should be doing our own genomics experiments. We should actually, on ourselves.
Here that will do it. I just listen to them. Forgot their name. I'd have to look it up. For $99.
What do people think about this? Should you be doing your own genomics experiments, actually following it through school as a kind of, it's part of the curriculum in a way that you actually start to deal with some of these questions and get to know some of these genetic questions?
Well, I mean, a question, because it comes back to like definitions and understanding definitions, because if someone said, I can give you your genomic data for $99, I would be extremely skeptical of that. Or I would say, how do you define genomic data, right? So if it's a, is that a panel, right? Is that one gene? Is that a microarray? Is that a, there's like infinite definitions. And so a company who's saying that, or a website, or people like, there's people promoting these really like low coverage, like whole genome kind of assays where they're saying, I'm doing your genome, and they can say it's for $99, and they kind of are querying the entire genome a little bit. But then there's like...
Is it not a good starting point just to sort of like get the ball rolling, to get it out there, to get genomics out there to a wider field?
I don't know. I mean, I work in the field, and I have zero access to any of my genomic data, and I understand it's very difficult to...
Would you like to have it?
I mean, I'm already a healthy adult too, so it matters. It doesn't really matter to me. Like, there's nothing in my genome that is going to, educate me on something specific to me now.
Okay. Would have a bit of a show of hands? Would you like to have your genomic healthy people? Yeah. See me? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to come to you.
I think even if you're healthy, you need your genome. It's good to have your genome out there because, for example, I personally I don't get affected with cold germs so easily. Like I get, yeah, very very good immune system. So sometimes I think I want to see how is it different from it, you know?
Is it?
Yeah, it's simple inquisitiveness, but then it can lead to a lot of good insights. I believe that.
I'm just going to come to Jennifer.
One of the things, and this is, I think, an example of why, to me, it's important to also look at the people who are healthier is I happen to have a rare blood disorder, and one of the standards of treatment is going to be, for a lot of these newer, like children born with that, it's going to be to take out the gallbladder. Because in their lifetime, they typically have gallbladder, very significant gallbladder issues. However, now I am 48 years old, and I have never had a gallbladder issue, and I have one of the most serious forms of this particular disorder. Right. So my question is, so why is my gallbladder fine? I mean, I wouldn't want my kid to have their gallbladder taken out if they didn't need to.
No reason,
you know, first. So those are to me, that's like those are important questions, and how do you get the answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many insights and understanding. I'm just going to come over here.
Well, in your case, we would not know how to deal with it. Removing the gallbladder is current treatment.
Yeah.
But and you would want to give your data, even though you don't have any issues, because it's a donation to the rest of humanity.
In a way, we're also finding out what makes us healthy as well as what makes us ill.
I was just going to mention that it's really not so much our genome, but the epigenome. It's the expression of those genes that seem to vary from individual to individual, even though we all share 99.9% of the same genes, and there are occasional variations where there are mutations. But I think we're talking more about that expression. So why are some genes expressed and others are not? And those are environmentally impacted. So have you been exposed to certain toxins over many, many years, or not? Or have you had a healthier diet, which is why maybe your immune system is so strong? You know, and there are the geographic conditions. There's so many pieces. It's such a complex puzzle.
It may not be your genetics, it may be something else, but maybe that genomic information can help us find that. Okay, where do we want to go with this conversation? I mean, I think it's a good point here about should we just routinely would people here just submit their genome to a public database? Would they be playing with it at school in some kind of future kind of sci-fi education program? These are questions on the table at the moment, and everyone's welcome. Come and get involved if you've got a view on this. Have you got a view?
So I think the benefit to have all the genome available to other people is for comparative analysis. And as like you said, healthy people has actually serve as a reference right now. Because I'm a bioinformatician, right? You find some variable like region, but it's true or false. Maybe it's normal among other individuals. Maybe it's among even healthy people. Yeah, and so that base, the broader base, because everybody is different, but different doesn't mean not healthy, right? So another thing is, it's good to have it open, but then there's a practical issue. For example, is if my data is out there, if it's identifiable, because and it's insurance against me if I have something. Or when I get employees, they're going to have, say, well, this person might have intelligence issue, I mean, I'm just saying, some kind of thing. Many things. And maybe when you go for date, maybe people look at it, oh no, I mean, I'm just saying, there's different issues, right?
Maybe if we found out you never got colds, you'd be a better employee, and we'd hire you because you wouldn't take any days off sick.
We talk about the level of security, about certain data can be secure. You don't have to release your personal data and your identification, etc.
Is there a way to protect you out there, but also make it secure, so make it available for these studies? You say no. We've got to have both. Okay, but let's get some final thoughts. There is this question, I guess we've got quite a lot of younger people around the table. Do you see that future that people actually would contribute and actually give their data and not worry about things like insurance and employability and all of this kind of angsty thing. I mean, you certainly, I'm just guessing, pure stereotype, giving your data to all those social media platforms without too much concern. So would you also give away this genetic data? Let's get some final thoughts on this side of the table. Any thoughts on this?
So I don't know how public this is, but one of the things that my family has done is like the ancestry program where they're sending your DNA to get tested, and you can get results back like places where you've been cultural background. So that kind of is something that's starting to grow in the younger generations, is sending that kind of DNA in, and that could build. I mean, it would probably help with, determine cultural ties and seeing where, based on, where you might live, what diseases could arise in your future.
Final thoughts?
We're so fortunate to live in a time when we can know all of our ancestry and all of our DNA at the same time. And our kids will look back on history and say, how could they have done what they did? Knowing, because they will know, we will know everything. I'll know where I came from, I do now. Just, join 23andMe if nothing else.
Yeah, I'm for it too. When you donate your organs when you die, why not you donate your, so they're doing good. I think we should forget about what badly happens on insurance companies using it, misusing it, but there are too many good attributes connected to this.
You're not doing it as a school child. Certainly, would you donate your DNA once you die, like an organ donation? Could you donate your DNA to some kind of database? So come and get involved in this. I think we've got these people are leaving. Give us a final thought.
Yeah, I mean, everyone sharing data is great. Yeah, you're welcome. I was a minor role relatively, but yeah, congratulations everyone.
When I know you're off, but a quick one. Not everyone has to go, by the way. I'm still carrying this on. As listening to what I guess some younger people are saying and these questions, I mean, has it kind of changed how you feel about how to communicate?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think everything's very context specific and very, so you can either talk like at a very high level about anything with anyone, or I try and match what I know to what they know, and then I try and have them challenge my assumptions because I'm not always correct, and I want to learn I'm not the expert, so I want to get as much feedback from anyone else as possible, and then put that through my own filter.
So in a way, it's a bit like having a conversation and going deeper and deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you working for Pharma? Because I, as a nurse, I'm about to advise everybody not to take any medication until they've had their pharmacogenomics done. Because you can get sick from medication that is prescribed to you.
That is great at a high level, but there's so many companies or services offering different pharmacogenomic information, and so to ask a person who's not involved, who's barely involved in their healthcare today, right? Go find the right genetic test service and get that done, and then you figure that out and present that to a doctor. That's a really huge ask today. Like that, and that only causes more confusion. Personally, I don't trust the general population to do it, or I wouldn't recommend them to spend their money on it, basically.
Okay, I'm just gonna thanks, Brendan. We've got a new face. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Greg.
Greg, come forward because we're going to keep this going. Yeah, okay, well, give us a final thought on this. So, I mean, Brendan doesn't trust the general public with this genomic data right now. In the future, maybe, yeah.
I don't completely agree with you need to get a pharmacogenetic thing done before using any medicines, etc. See, there are two different aspects. There is a personalized medicine level where you need to know your genome, which helps. But there are ailments which need a general treatment too. For example, again, I would take my personal reference there. There was a point where I was stuck with arthritis. I couldn't walk. It was like post-pregnancy, postpartum. I just took the medication and I'm like completely alright. You don't need to go at that level, but yeah, there are levels where you need personalized medicine, cancer treatment, etc. Or immunological diseases and stuff.
Okay.
What I'm saying is a consensus helped when the medicines were developed based on some consensus data. You need both. You need the data to get the consensus as well as get personalized treatment and know your genomics capabilities.
Okay. Greg, because you're new to the table, I have to give you preference, but
I'm sad that it's called pharmacogenomics because it's really our metabolism type, and that's part of our omic information. Our metabolome determines how we will metabolize it and drop it. And so it shouldn't be called pharmacogenomics. In fact, the more we can keep pharma or medicine or anything else out of our biology and how it relates.
There's too much pharma there already.
Yeah, because healthcare is all messed up. And so on.
No, I mean there's quite a few. I mean, Greg, any of those topics, themes strike a chord with you?
So I'm actually a pharmacist working in genomic medicine, so it's definitely something that's relevant. I think that I definitely agree that for some patients it definitely should be done. The benefit is definitely there. Right, definitely. But especially in regards to like pain medication. If you're not a good metabolizer of certain pain medications, you can be at risk for respiratory depression or other severe side effects. So definitely in that regard. But in general, I think that,
Can I just ask you, where do you stand on this idea about, what's your name again? Judy, Mikey. Judy's point that actually we should be ready and willing and keen to, not just for our own medical treatment, but for a greater combined human understanding, to submit our genetic data, to get it out there, to actually get this process on the road. Omic data, all the omics,
I personally don't see like the harm in doing that. I mean, if someone's willing to submit their information, then the more the merrier. Actually, I think it gives us more insight into the more data we have, the better, the more better judgments we can make off of it. So,
Judy's come up with this great idea to actually do this in schools, to make it a school project where you're actually researching your own genome as part of a kind of learning or understanding genomic medicine, on that kind of high school level.
Now here's what we do. Alcoholism is caused actually by a lack of alcohol dehydrogenase in certain types, and nationalities are more susceptible to alcohol and so on. And kids are unaware of what their type is. So in school, they would just learn what their level of alcohol dehydrogenase is, whether they should try drinking or not. I was delighted to find out that I'm a high caffeine metabolizer, so that I could say, leave me alone. I'm a metabolizer of caffeine. I can have my coffee.
You can handle it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we've got new faces at the table. We've got Judy, we've got Greg. What's your name?
Al.
Al. I'm Mikey. At the moment we're talking about, there's a few subjects on the table that are all in a kind of unique way combined together. And Judy's got a lot of ideas about how to. One of the big problems, I'll just start off by saying, talking about, how do you communicate a lot of this very, very complex science to a non-expert audience? And that's been, I guess, the main theme today. Going from somebody at a party that, when they say they're a bioinformatician, their eyes just glaze over, so they can't even explain what they do. Just to the point about people don't understand these developments, these advances that are going to take over medicine. So there's that one question, but there's also the question about what do we do with all of that data? Judy wants that to be a school project where people actually explore their own genomic data, their omics. Sorry, I've got their whole I'll let you explain it rather than me.
It's more like they're being taught a language.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to develop it so that it's simple language, not complex.
Yeah. I think
and omics is perfect.
Yeah.
And I call our record the omic medical record.
Yeah.
As opposed to the EHR, it's the OMR.
Right. Okay.
And we have a search engine called Omer That.
Yeah.
And I even bought domains and so on.
So this is going forward. Yeah. So there's all these ideas, and we talked to some high school students, and although they said they understood, because we had a guy that invented the cancer drug, I don't feel that they really. I was not really picking up what the guy was saying. So there is this gap in language. So
this high school student invented a cancer drug?
No, it wasn't a high school student. It was just another guy called Brendan that invented the cancer drug. But he was trying to explain to the high school people how the drug worked. And it was in quite a complicated way. I don't know if were you listening to that?
It turns out that one is radioactive and his is not.
Yeah.
And okay, so that connects really well with me because I don't like radiation at all.
Yeah. And
in fact, I think we should wear one of those Sensi monitors all the time and just feed that in as part of our data that we're collecting.
Well, I'm about to take a radioactive test in a couple days.
Yeah? What is that?
Well, it's to look at my heart. It's a stress test to see whether I have cardiovascular disease or not, and the cardiologist believes I do not have it because this is to rule it out and so she works her way out of her job.
Right. I mean, are you worried about the radiation going into?
No, it's one of these short-lived
Yeah. I mean, where do you stand on the question? Where do you stand on this question about how do we communicate these things? How do we actually?
Well, every doctor has to communicate things like that to their patients when they suggest that they take these tests.
Yeah. Are they doing it well enough?
It depends. Well, I have a pretty high level of understanding, so I don't know. I don't know what they do to someone who had a much lower level of understanding.
Okay.
And
for you, it makes sense.
But I am a consultant, so I need to explain how various things work to business people and to people who are where this new drug or new test or whatever is being developed. So,
one of the things that's been said in those that's been responded about, like how, there is a gap between these very, very complex things that, going on the military stands, and the level of complexity is very, very high. And a clinical setting where people have got, we had a lady with a kind of genetic blood disorder, people like that. How do you actually, what are the secrets of actually kind of explaining what's going on here in the sort of professional genomics to people, to patients, to individuals? Are there any things that you use?
In high school or in any other kind of school, in university, if you're not learning rather basic language skills to start with, and then basic biology and so on, you're going to be out to sea.
Right. So you think
and this is
lies in the schools in a way?
A lot of this education is being dumbed down,
right,
and it's being used for other useless stuff like being politically correct,
right,
and all that. And they need to get back to a basic level so that everyone takes biology,
right,
and that many people take general science or chemistry or whatever. And before that, so that they take language skills, English, or foreign languages in some cases, and so on.
I mean, earlier on with the high school students did kind of talk about all of this stuff as a new language, and they said, maybe here there needs to be interpreters here who can sort of interpret between the languages. Greg, have you got any thoughts about that? Do you think that education could be better? Is that the answer? I'll come to you in a second.
Yeah, I think that I'm not really sure how it is today because I've been out of high school for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I think that I know we didn't really have too much. We definitely did genetics and everything, but we didn't have maybe a little bit more on like the personalized medicine kind of a thing. In high school would have been good. Just a little bit of exposure like in a health class or something, or a science class. I don't know. Definitely something that could be incorporated. Definitely.
Okay. I mean, what is stopping this more extensive education from happening? What is it? As Alan says, is it a focus on the wrong things? You talked about political correctness, or do you think it's something else?
Honestly, I'm not sure really, but I know one of my friends is a teacher. I know that like they have like set things they have to teach. They can't really go outside of that. So maybe that has something to do with it, but honestly, I can't speak to it.
Controlling things and so on. That's why we have a charter school movement, a school choice movement to get out from under those unions.
Okay, so you think it's down to the union? Give us a final thought before you go, but let me just get one from Julie.
You have to do it the way kids are doing it now with YouTube videos and so on.
So actually it's the way of teaching.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. And so we have to be savvy, and we're talking about kids now. Our generation will have to, we'll have to put up with the old stuff.
Okay. So I understand how, because we've got another. Okay. Well, I'm going to break this down, but we're just going to maybe get final thoughts. All right. So we. Okay. It might be time even to kind of finish this up. Although I do think there's a few things to wrap up. Great. Just a final thought.
Oh yeah, I just think that I mean, in general, it's genetic related. My boss always says you have to be adaptable. So I think that just going forward with all the information we're getting, we have to figure out ways to adapt that to various.
It's about changing in a way, adapting and changing.
Right. I think that's the most important takeaway from all of this potentially.
Let me get a final thought from you, Al, before you go.
Well, I'm just trying to go to the place where I can just rest right now. I didn't intend to be on a talk show.
Okay, well, that's the great thing about Talkaoke. I mean, can I get a final thought as well from Julie? Some great ideas, and I think of anyone, you provided the most different kinds of technologies and ideas to actually bring this into the forefront and bring it to a wider audience.
Yeah, and throughout my practice, it's been so bad that I've tried to build a better mousetrap. And if you teach kids the language and how to use it.
Yeah.
And then they have a platform.
Yeah.
Call it the Library of Humans.
Yeah.
Or the Library of Open Humans.
Yeah.
It's a public library.
Yeah.
And if you focus on biology versus anything socio-political, you just go around it. And you only talk about biology. Then, and you teach it to kids. And they'll fix us.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about what you're saying is about using their creativity and their imagination to actually build something new that we can't even imagine how the young people are going to.
We're thankful for science, and they're heroes for how far they've come. There's an information highway, I liken it to a rapids, and jump in. And there's already people that have gone through the haystacks and are out there in the placid world. Don't be left behind.
Okay, amazing. Any final thought, Greg? I think that's a good one to end it on. I mean, we've been going for a while now. We're getting a new delivery of stools rather than chairs, so that's good for the next session. Thanks very much. It's been very interesting. That's our cards. Please take one. We're here all day, just going to break for lunch anyway. And thanks everyone that's taken part in this session. It's been very interesting.